So, um, have you ever felt that exhausting, just relentless pressure to somehow earn your place in the world?
Oh, absolutely. We all have.
Right. You know that feeling. It's that gnawing imposter syndrome where you feel like you constantly have to prove your worth at your job.
Or in your relationships.
Yes, exactly. Or keeping your achievements, or honestly, even your own self-esteem on this sort of precarious...
Your support.
Life support,
Yeah.
exactly. And if you stop hustling for even a second, it feels like it's all just going to slip away. I mean, it is an absolutely exhausting way to live.
It really is.
Well, welcome to today's deep dive. We are so glad you're here with us because today we're actually looking at a fascinating piece of source material that tackles this exact feeling of burnout.
But it approaches it from a perspective you really might not expect.
Yeah, you really wouldn't. We're looking at a transcript from a YouTube video. It's titled Wisdom for Everyday Saving Faith. And it was originally delivered as a sermon at Calvary Charlottetown. And our mission for this deep dive is to explore how this specific text tackles a very old philosophical and theological debate. Basically, the relationship between what we internally believe, our faith, and what we physically do, which are our actions or works.
Exactly. And on right out of the gate, I do want to clarify our approach today.
Yeah.
Because the source material is, of course, a deeply religious text. It's a Christian sermon.
Which is important context.
It is.
Right.
But our goal for you today isn't to preach. And it certainly isn't to take sides in a theological debate or endorse these concepts as ultimate truth.
Definitely, yeah.
Instead, we are looking at this transcript impartially. We're unpacking the speaker's incredibly interesting arguments about human persuasion, the nature of action, and this fundamental concept of a free gift.
Because those are really universal themes.
Exactly. It's all about how internal belief translates into external reality. So regardless of your personal background, the mechanics of how this text breaks down human behavior, conviction, and integrity, it's really quite intriguing.
I couldn't agree more. So let's jump right into the central conflict the speaker sets up. Because it is essentially the ultimate biblical paradox.
It really is a massive tension in the text.
Right. According to the transcript, you have two major voices presenting what looks like two entirely different paths.
Which can be super confusing for a reader.
Exactly. So on one side, you have the Apostle Paul. The speaker points out that Paul claims salvation is entirely a free gift.
Completely unearned.
Right, unearned. He says it's given by grace, which in this context basically means an unearned, totally unmerited favor, and it's through faith alone.
And the argument there is that it's specifically designed that way, so absolutely no one can brag about earning it.
Yes. Paul argues you literally cannot keep enough rules or do enough good deeds to clear your own record.
But then,
on the exact same topic, you have the book of James, which is actually the primary focus of this text.
right.
And James asks a very pointed, almost aggressive question. He says, what good is it if a person says they have faith but does not have works? Can that faith save him?
It's a heavy question.
It really is. And wait, if Paul explicitly says you can't earn it with works, and James implies that faith without works is completely useless, that sounds like a massive contradiction to me.
It does. This raises an important question. How do you harmonize two seemingly opposite viewpoints without just, invalidating either of them?
How does the speaker actually reconcile that?
Well, looking at the speaker's framework, the argument is that Paul and James are not contradictory at all. They are actually complementary.
Really, complementary.
Yes, but to see that, you have to understand the timeline. The speaker points out a crucial bit of historical context here. The book of James was likely the very first piece of the New Testament ever written.
Oh, wow. I didn't realize that.
Yeah, so because it came first, it set the baseline.
Okay.
When Paul was writing his letters to places like Rome or Ephesus decades later, he was actually assuming that James's baseline argument was already understood.
Oh, that makes so much sense.
Right. Paul was writing with the assumption that his audience already knew that true, genuine faith naturally comes with a corresponding action.
So if you isolate their quotes on a deserted island, sure, they look like they clash.
Exactly. But read together sequentially, the speaker argues they harmonize into one complete picture.
Okay, let's unpack this, because the speaker does something next that I found super helpful for making sense of this whole thing. They redefine the vocabulary.
Which is so necessary.
It is, because, let's be honest, when we use words like faith or works today, we bring a ton of modern cultural baggage to them.
Oh, a massive amount of baggage.
Yeah. But the transcript breaks down the specific original Greek definitions used in the text of James to decode what is really being discussed.
Right, let's look at those.
So first, they define faith. In this specific framework, the text says faith translates more accurately to persuasion.
Persuasion.
I found that fascinating. It's not just blind trust. It's not just a polite intellectual nod to some historical fact.
No, it's much deeper than that.
It is the state of being thoroughly, completely persuaded based on evidence. It's like a jury returning a verdict. You have a case, and you are convinced.
And that distinction is vital for the rest of the argument. It moves belief from a passive thought to an active conviction.
Yes.
Then the speaker defines works. When James says works, the argument is that he isn't talking about what we usually picture.
Like pious charity deeds.
Right, or relentless moral rule-keeping, or trying to be on your absolute best behavior to impress the universe.
Exactly.
He simply means an action in response.
An action in response.
Yes.
It is the physical activation of that internal persuasion. It's the moment the internal verdict changes how you physically move through the world.
That makes it so much clearer. And finally, the text defines the word dead. When James famously says faith without works is dead, the speaker notes a really interesting nuance.
This part is crucial.
It is. It doesn't mean something that was once alive and then it slowly starved to death because you didn't feed it enough good deeds.
Right. It's not about maintenance. Exactly.
Yeah.
The Greek implication is having never been alive in the first place.
Yeah. So putting it all together, the argument is that internal persuasion without a physical action in response never actually comes to life.
It's stillborn.
Right. And to make this incredibly concrete, the speaker uses a really vivid analogy from the book of James.
The talk is cheap analogy.
Yes, the talk is cheap analogy. Imagine a person who is freezing and starving. They have no coat, they have no food.
The desperate situation.
Very desperate. And someone walks up to them, uses their mouth, and says, "Go in peace, be warmed, and be filled," but doesn't actually hand them a sandwich or offer them a jacket.
Wow. Yeah, it perfectly illustrates the utter uselessness of mere intellectual agreement.
Exactly. Those words, no matter how beautiful or well-intentioned, cannot physically warm a freezing body or feed an empty stomach.
The sentiment might be there, but without the action, it's irrelevant to reality.
It totally reminds me of modern workplace dynamics.
Oh, do tell.
Imagine you're completely burned out, drowning in projects, and your boss says, "We really value your mental health here. Take care of yourself."
Oh, I know this one.
Right. But then they turn around and hand you 3 more urgent assignments. The words are there. The intellectual sentiment is there, but without the action actually taking things off your plate, that sentiment is completely dead.
It doesn't help you at all.
It's a great parallel. The speaker uses this concept to argue that simply saying you have faith, having the intellectual belief or the right vocabulary without any accompanying physical action and response, does absolutely nothing.
It has no value, which naturally makes you wonder, if empty words can't warm a freezing person, what does an empty, dead belief actually look like in practice?
And the speaker goes to a pretty intense place to show that.
They really do. The speaker uses a pretty shocking, edgy example to illustrate this. Demons.
Yeah, that caught my attention.
The text points out that, technically speaking, even demons have faith. They are entirely persuaded. The sermon references the ancient Jewish prayer, the Shema. For context, the Shema isn't just a casual prayer. It is the ultimate core declaration of Jewish identity and monotheism. It declares that God is one.
And the text argues that demons completely believe this fact.
You do. They are intellectually persuaded that God is one, and their response is that they shudder in fear. But according to this specific theological framework, demons are utterly depraved. They are beyond redemption.
So they possess persuasion, but they have no saving action in response to it.
Exactly. Humans, on the other hand, the text notes, are redeemable.
And to show what that redeeming action actually looks like in human beings, the speaker presents 2 historical case studies.
This is my favorite part of the transcript.
It's so well structured. Now, before we get into the specific names, it's worth noting how the text sets this up. To prove this isn't just some elite rule for the hyper-religious, the speaker contrasts 2 archetypes from totally opposite ends of the societal spectrum. On one hand, you have the ultimate revered founder of a faith, a patriarch.
A heavy hitter.
The heaviest. And on the other, you have an outcast on the extreme margins of a foreign city.
I just love how they juxtapose those two. So let's look at the patriarch first. The text brings up Abraham.
Yes.
The speaker walks us through the famous and honestly very intense story where God asks Abraham to sacrifice his own son, Isaac.
It's a story that challenges a lot of modern readers.
I'm always a little taken aback by that story myself, but the speaker makes a very important theological distinction here to explain what's really happening,
Yes, the text argues strongly that God never actually wanted child sacrifice.
which is a relief to hear.
Absolutely. That was a common horrific pagan ritual in the surrounding cultures of that era, and the text insists God wasn't interested in adopting that.
So what was the point then?
What God was testing was persuasion. He wanted to see if Abraham would withhold anything from him, to see if his internal belief would translate into the ultimate action.
Okay, that makes sense based on the definitions we laid out.
Right. Abraham was persuaded, and his action in response was going through with the terrifying process of offering his son. But because he acted on that persuasion, the text says God stayed his hand and provided a substitute.
A ram caught in the bushes.
Exactly. Abraham's persuasion, perfectly paired with his action, is what the text says justified him. And by justify, the speaker essentially means having your record wiped completely clean, being made right.
Right. Okay, so that's the patriarch. Then we get the second case study, which is an amazing pivot. We go from Abraham to a woman named Rahab.
Such a different background.
Entirely different. She was a marginalized prostitute living in the walled city of Jericho. Now, I had no idea about the deeper backstory here, but the text points out that the nation of Israel had just spent 40 years wandering in the desert.
40 years is a long time.
It is, and the reason they were wandering, because decades earlier they lacked persuasion. They believed the bad, fearful report of 10 spies who said the promised land was full of giants, instead of believing the 2 hopeful spies.
So they wandered until a whole generation passed.
Exactly. Now, 40 years later, Moses is gone, Joshua is in charge, and he sends 2 brand new spies into Jericho to scope it out.
And out of all the doors in Jericho, they end up knocking on Rahab's.
Yes. The text points out that Rahab tells these spies that her entire city has heard about the God of Israel. They heard how he parted the sea and brought the people out of Egypt.
The whole city is terrified.
But Rahab is entirely persuaded that the God of Israel is the true God. But here's the crucial difference.
The action.
The action. She doesn't just hold that intellectual belief while sitting in her house. She acts on it. Her action in response is incredibly dangerous.
Very risky.
She hides the spies on her roof, protects them from the king's guards, and smuggles them out of the city through a window, asking in return to be spared from the coming destruction.
And according to the text, she is spared. Her and her entire family, her actions saved her.
It's an incredible story.
What's fascinating here is how the speaker synthesizes the stark contrast between these 2 examples. You have Abraham, a foundational, wealthy patriarch, and you have Rahab, a Gentile prostitute who would have been considered the lowest of the low in that society. Yet the speaker uses both of them to prove the exact same mechanism of action.
It levels the playing field completely.
It really does. It doesn't matter who you are, what your background is, or how much religious clout you have. The formula is identical. Both of them possess persuasion about who God was, and both of them triggered an action and response that ultimately saved them.
Here's where it gets really interesting, though. What exactly is that action?
That's the million-dollar question.
It is. If the required action isn't just doing a bunch of charity work or being a perfectly moral person or keeping a giant list of rules, what is the specific action required to activate the saving faith today?
Well, the text lays out 2 very specific necessary actions to complete the equation.
Let's look at the first one.
The first required action, according to the speaker, is offering and receiving a life.
Offering and receiving.
Yes. The argument presented is that simply offering your own life to God isn't enough, because within this theology, human life falls short of the perfect mark. Every human is flawed, broken, and makes mistakes.
Right. Nobody is perfect.
So the essential action isn't just trying to offer your own messy life. It is receiving the substitute life that God offers.
The substitute.
The speaker directly parallels this back to the story of Abraham. Just as God provided the ram as a perfect substitute for Isaac, the text argues that God provided the life of Jesus as the substitute for humanity.
Okay.
The action required by the individual is to actively receive that offered life.
You know, to put that in a modern, everyday context, it's kind of like being drowning in massive credit card debt.
Oh, that's a good analogy.
Imagine you owe millions of dollars. There's no way you can ever pay it off, and you're facing total ruin. And then a wealthy friend steps in, pays off the entire balance, and wires the money to your account.
The dream scenario.
The ultimate dream scenario. The money is there. The debt is technically covered. But You still have to log into your banking app and actively click accept on the transfer for it to actually clear your account.
You have to do something.
Yes, if you just stare at the screen and say, I believe my friend sent the money, but you never click accept, you are still in debt. The action is the receiving.
That is a brilliant way to conceptualize it. The provision is there, but the agency remains with you to accept it.
Exactly.
And that leads directly into the second action the speaker outlines, opening a door.
Opening a door.
The text leans heavily on the story of Rahab for this one. She literally heard a knock, opened her physical door, and let the spies in, even though it was a massive risk to her own safety.
Right.
The speaker connects this historical moment to a famous piece of imagery from the book of Revelation, chapter 3, verse 20, where Jesus says he stands at the door and knocks.
I've heard that verse before.
It's very well known, and the speaker makes a huge emphatic point here. Jesus will not, quote, break and enter.
No forced entry.
Exactly. He will not force his way into a person's life, no matter how much they might need it.
Which is such a profound concept of consent and agency.
It really is.
The persuasion might be there. The substitute life might be completely paid for and offered. But the individual has to walk up to the door and turn the handle.
Yes.
The speaker argues that opening the door to that purpose is the only thing that spares a person from the proverbial destruction of Jericho. It requires a voluntary active response to the knocking. You have to participate.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, we arrive at the speaker's ultimate conclusion, which really addresses that feeling of burnout we discussed at the very beginning of our conversation.
Oh, right. The exhaustion of trying to earn it.
Exactly. The core thesis is this. Salvation is inherited, not merited.
Inherited.
Yes. Think about how an inheritance works in the real world. If a wealthy relative leaves you an estate, you didn't work for it. You didn't clock in 40 hours a week to earn it.
No, you just receive it.
Right. An inheritance is only given because someone else died. According to the transcript's logic, Jesus did all the necessary work, died to provide the inheritance, and then, as the book of Hebrews notes, he sat down.
He sat down.
The work is finished. The inheritance is fully prepared, fully funded, and waiting. You just have to be a member of the family to receive it, which happens through that internal persuasion and the physical action of opening the door.
And the speaker directly applies this concept to the modern listener to relieve that exact exhausting pressure of trying to earn your place.
Which so many people struggle with.
They really do. The text acknowledges that a lot of people read these ancient scriptures, specifically the book of James, where he talks about faith without works being dead, and they walk away feeling judged.
They feel incredibly condemned.
Yes. They look at their messy lives and think, I haven't volunteered enough, I haven't donated enough, haven't been kind enough.
They feel like they have to keep their salvation on life support.
Exactly. By hitting some invisible, exhausting quota, like reading a certain number of Bible chapters every single day, or praying for exactly 30 minutes, or making sure they are in a church building every Sunday.
Trying to maintain the unmaintainable.
Right. They are terrified that if they drop the ball, their faith will die.
The transcript explicitly and strongly argues against that mindset.
It's a huge relief.
It is. The speaker states that the text is absolutely not saying your faith will die if you don't do enough good works to sustain it.
Okay, so what is it saying?
The argument is that good works, kindness, charity, moral choices naturally follow salvation as a byproduct of that relationship. They are the fruit, not the root.
The fruit, not the root. I love that phrasing.
They absolutely do not earn the inheritance, nor do they keep it alive. The inherited gift is already secure. The works are just the natural, unforced outpouring of a life that has already been transformed by the simple act of opening the door.
So what does this all mean? If we wrap up the core arguments of this source material, the text is saying that true, saving faith is not merely an intellectual agreement that certain historical events happened.
Right.
As the text notes, people of various faiths, or even no faith at all, might believe Jesus existed historically, but an intellectual nod isn't what this text defines as saving faith.
Because that talk is cheap.
Exactly. But on the flip side, faith isn't a grueling, never-ending marathon of trying to merit a divine inheritance through perfect behavior and endless good deeds.
No.
Instead, according to the transcript, it is beautifully simple. It is being fully persuaded by the evidence and taking the specific, decisive action to open the door and receive the free gift that was already paid for by a substitute.
It's persuasion, perfectly paired with a singular action and response.
Beautifully summarized.
And as we step back from the specifically religious and theological context of this transcript, I think there's a profound secular and universal application for you to mull over today.
I agree completely.
Even completely outside the realm of religion, this text challenges us to examine the integrity between our internal minds and our external lives. How often do we separate what we intellectually believe from how we actually behave?
All the time.
Think about your health, your relationships, or your career path. You might be completely intellectually persuaded that a certain habit is toxic, or that a specific career move is the right thing for your future, or that you need to set a boundary with a toxic friend.
But doing it is a different story.
Exactly. Can you truly say you believe in those things if your daily actions don't reflect that belief in the slightest?
That's a really tough question.
It is. Is it possible that, much like the text suggests, our own unacted upon beliefs, our own internal persuasions that never translate into the physical world, are essentially dead?
Wow.
It's a really compelling lens through which to view human integrity. It asks us, what good is it to know the truth if you refuse to act on it?
It really is. It challenges you to look at where your words end and your actions begin in every single area of your life.
Right.
We want to thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive today. Whether you're exploring ancient texts, unpacking philosophical debates, or just trying to figure out how to live with a little more integrity and a little less burnout in your own life, we encourage you to keep questioning, keep learning, and keep diving.
See you next time.